So many people are walking the surface of this earth with terribly low self-esteem. And the core of that low self-esteem is the feeling of not being valued. When we value something, we recognize that it has worth because it's useful, beneficial, or important. And it's looking at that definition of value that can actually change your life. The realization that can change your life is that value is entirely based upon needs. I want you to sit with that concept for a minute while I explain how this whole thing has the capacity to increase your self-esteem. When you were young, unfortunately, you came into an unawakened society. And in this particular society, there were collective social and cultural values. Those are the values that you become completely indoctrinated with. And when a society has a specific value, it tends to condemn the opposite. For example, self-sacrifice may be a social value, in which case selfishness is condemned. To the opposite, winning may be a social value, in which case considering someone else's best interest above your own is condemned. We deem one good and the other bad. Because of our societal decision to keep societal order, what we do is we indoctrinate children with these social or cultural values. And this is how we do it. We reward them when they adopt and live by those, and we punish them when they don't. If you want to survive in society, if you want to feel good at all, if you want to have a chance at your needs being met, needs like belonging, love, connection, you have one option. That's to adopt and adhere to the values of your specific social group. The disapproval and punishment you are met with as a result of not adhering to these societal values is painful enough that you will avoid it in the future at all costs. In response, what you do in order to avoid it in the future is to adopt the social value and make it your own. You make it your own standard for yourself. This is a problem if any of these values become standards that oppose your own truth or your own unique being. For example, let's imagine that a child is born into an artistic community, but this child is more of a scientist. His only way of surviving is to adopt that value of artistry and then use that as a standard for himself, a standard he's going to fall miserably short of over and over and over again. Here's another example. Let's say that you've got a little boy who feels like he's gay, but he is in a Christian society that teaches that it is completely wrong for there to be a romantic or sexual relationship between a man and a man. Now, his only way of surviving in this type of a situation is to adopt that same cultural and social value. That means it's only right to have a relationship with another woman. Yet again, this becomes his new standard for himself, which he's going to fail at over and over and over again. Because even if he does end up in a relationship with a woman, deep down he knows he's failing at it, if you catch my drift. To understand this concept about values being entirely based upon needs, I'm going to give you a scenario. Imagine that you're driving down the highway when you see a man running into the middle of the road as fast as he can to retrieve a ladder that's fallen out of the back of a truck. I want you to think about the different reactions to the situation that could be elicited in the people that are driving by it. One driver could be absolutely furious because the man caused him to swerve so as to not hit him. One driver could thank God for his bravery, because by risking his own life to run out into the road, he's potentially saving the lives of anyone else who might hit that ladder. If this man has a wife and children, they may feel betrayed because their husband and father would choose to risk his life without a thought to the pain it would cause them. A police officer may see this man as an absolute idiot and be upset that he didn't call the authorities when he had to deal with the ladder on the highway. A news anchor may want to feature him on the nightly news as a hero. All of these reactions were entirely different, did you notice? They were different because they had different needs, different past experiences, and therefore, different values. Values are determined by needs. So relative to this example I just gave you, let's look at some of the needs that might be behind these reactions. If I need to get to work on time, I'm going to value an efficient highway and get really angry at a person who gets in my way. If I need to stay safe, I'm going to value anyone who makes sure the road is a safe place for me to drive. If I need my husband alive, I'm going to value any act that keeps him with me and devalue any act that could take him away. If I need to feel like I'm in control of public safety, I'm going to value people who follow the frickin' rules and get angry at anyone who risks their own life. If I'm a news anchor, who values a really good story because it's really good for my own career, I'm going to value a story about a public hero. Beliefs, rules, and standards are formed because of your needs. So I want you to do the following exercise. Examine your beliefs, rules, and values through the lens of every one of them is created in response to a need of parents, culture, or society at some point in time. Also, beliefs, values, and rules change when needs change. When it comes to the concept of self-worth, the first thing you have to do is to throw the concept of self-worth or worth in general away. Why? Because worth is entirely subjective. It's entirely based on the specific needs and circumstances of a given moment in time. The criteria created to define whether a person has worth is entirely based on the specific society or family that this person's born into. I'll give you 2 examples. The quality of being able to be completely present is useless in a society that values doing. Being gorgeous is absolutely useless in a society where everyone is blind. So it's at this point I'm going to tell you something that I never want you to forget. Perhaps the inborn value, those talents, those aptitudes, those interests, which really could add up to someone seeing you as worthy, or full of worth, I should say, is not what your society, culture, or family needed, wanted, or saw as important or beneficial or useful. Maybe the only reason you lack self-worth is because of the place you were born. For example, if you were born with artistic talents but landed in a family that valued the quality of scholarly intellect above all else, they may not consider your gifts valuable, and therefore, you would have received the message that you were not valuable. However, if you would have been born into a family of artists, your gift would have been instantaneously recognized as valuable, and therefore, you would have felt as if you were valuable. The sad reality is that you can be born into a society, culture, or family that is incompatible to you because your own innate value is not in alignment with their specific needs and therefore values. I'm going to tell you a story now so you can completely grasp this concept. It's a story that I've told before. Some of you may have heard it, some of you may not have. If not, this is your lucky day. The story starts like this. There's a horse that lives with a car salesman. This horse feels crappy about himself. All day, every day, he gets to watch this car salesman wipe all of these cars in his lot down with a diaper. I mean, hours spent like this. He overhears this man bragging about the fact that this engine is 140 horsepower. And he thinks to himself, gosh, it would take 140 of me to equal 1 of that car. He hears this man brag about how much money he can make on this car, and he realizes, I would sell for a lot less money. So this horse realizes that he's completely worthless. One day, he gets put into a trailer. As this horse is being driven away, he decides that it's finally happened. He's so worthless that they're getting rid of him. But when he's loaded out of this trailer, he sees a man who's standing there with a big grin on his face, super excited to see him. This confuses the horse. In the days to come, this man spends hours brushing him, just like that old car salesman used to do with the cars. He overhears this man bragging about how amazing this horse is because of his great conformation. This man has the need of sailing over these jumps, which a car could never do. And suddenly this horse has a realization that something's worth is entirely dependent upon somebody who has the needs that that thing meets. What the horse realizes is that there's value in everything in this world. It's simply a matter of being in the right place with the right person who will recognize the needs that you're designed to meet. So many of us grew up in households, went to schools, were part of cultures or societies where it's no different than a horse living with a car salesman. But it is just as much BS that just because you're being treated like you're being treated, it means you have no value. As it is BS that just because this car salesman treats the horse like he does, that the horse innately in and of itself has no value to anyone. So it's at this point that you're going to start to do another exercise. You're going to start to look at your parents' needs and at why they have those needs. You're going to see if your innate talents, tendencies, nature, and interests are something that they value. If not, what do they value? What needs make them value those things? Are you a match to those needs or not? For example, let's say that your mother does not value the fact that you tell it like it is. What she values is social etiquette and politeness. Why? Because she really needs to be seen as a good mother. That's her number one need. Now, it's pretty hard to get that need met when you've got a kid who's always telling it like it is. Why? Because you can only be seen as a really good mom in most societies when you've got a kid who's like insanely well behaved. A person who tells the truth or tells it like it is extremely valuable in certain social settings, in certain societies. There are people who would kill for a person like that. However, it's incompatible to the need of this mother keeping up appearances in her social sphere. Essentially, you need to realize that their valuing or lack thereof is not about you at all. It's about their needs. Another way of kind of grasping this concept is to understand that in most cultures, money is obviously something of value because you can use it to get whatever the hell you need, right? But overnight, let's say wartime strikes out, bam! Money in a specific country can become completely worthless overnight because the times and the needs changed. Worth and value is completely subjective, variable, often irrational, and dependent upon circumstance. For this reason, true human worth is impossible to determine. Another perspective about value, or another way of looking at it, is this. Instead of seeing that there's no worth or no inherent value in anything because it's completely subjective, I want you to consider that there is worth and value in absolutely everything that's inherent. However, that inherent worth in any one thing is only going to be recognized in certain situations and by certain individuals. Now, the mistake we make when we start to accept that our value is really dependent on someone needing us is that we suddenly start to want to change what they need and want. We're going to try to convince them to need or want what we can provide. That's really the wrong way of going about it. In fact, you're most likely going to just be running your head into a brick wall. So the better way of doing it is to really find those people, places, and cultures who will genuinely need what it is that you have innately as a value within you. In other words, it's a better strategy to find someone who has a need that's compatible to you, and it's a guarantee that you will be seen as valuable to someone. Who might that someone be? To revolutionize your self-worth, you're going to ask yourself the following question. If I were to accept today that value was entirely based on needs, then who needs me? Have a good week.